nations against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world, and then shall the end come.
Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?
Here's today's prophecy update. The Bible prophesies a war that will begin from the Euphrates River. The Euphrates runs through 4 nations: Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Iran. All 4 of these nations are now fighting up and down the Euphrates. Yesterday, August the 24th, Turkey launched an invasion of Syria in order to fight against the Islamic State and the Kurds. Turkey is calling its action, are you ready for this? Operation Euphrates Shield. The world's 2 nuclear superpowers, Russia and the United States, are also fighting on either side of the Euphrates River. It certainly looks like we are at the beginning of the prophesied Euphrates River War. If that proves to be true, we are entering the greatest war the world has ever known. The prophecy says 1/3 of the human race will die in this prophesied war. Now, that is staggering. Before we dive into our lesson today, I'd like to mention to all of you out there that I will be in Fort Smith, Arkansas this evening. I will be speaking there on America's God-given destiny. Now, it's so important that every person hears this lesson now. We know the United States is specifically mentioned in the Bible. Those of you that listen to this program regularly know that well. If you don't know it, you will after the conference this evening. But we're not simply going to tell you where the United States is in the Bible. Since that information came to me many years ago, I have slowly developed a fuller understanding as to the future of the United States. And I'm talking about the immediate future. Will the United States be a part of the kingdom of the Antichrist? Will the United States live under the mark of the beast? Will the United States defend Israel or forsake Israel? All of those questions are answered in Scripture, and we will be answering them tonight during our session on America's God-given destiny. The location for the conference this evening is the Northside United Pentecostal Church, 3700 Kelly Highway in Fort Smith, Arkansas. If you're anyways close, get there. It's going to be a great evening. Everybody that hears this lesson walks away saying, I'm so glad that I heard that. And when we talk about America's God-given destiny, we're talking about your destiny if you're an American, because you can't separate America's destiny from each of our own as Americans. So that's tonight at 7:30. The location, once again, Northside United Pentecostal Church, 3700 Kelly Highway in Fort Smith, Arkansas. I'm certainly going to look forward to seeing all of you there. Then on Saturday evening, August the 27th, we're going to be in Springfield, Missouri. I'm going to again be speaking on America's God-given destiny. So if you're not able to make it to the Fort Smith, Arkansas, maybe you can drive up to Springfield, Missouri. We're going to be speaking at 6 p.m. on Saturday evening there at the University Plaza Hotel, 333 John Q. Hammonds Parkway in Springfield, Missouri. Then I'm staying over for Sunday morning at the Calvary United Pentecostal Church, 3010 West Nichols Street, Springfield, Missouri. On Sunday morning at 10 o'clock, I'm going to be speaking on breaking prophetic fulfillments. Where are we right now in Bible prophecy? And then at the end of that session, I'm going to be opening it up for your questions, and I'll be supplying answers, hopefully. We're going to have two sessions that morning. One session at 10 a.m. The other session will be held at 12 noon. So you can come to either of those sessions or all of them if you choose to on Sunday morning. So that location is Sunday morning, 10 a.m. at the Calvary United Pentecostal Church, 3010 West Nichols Street, Springfield, Missouri. We'd love to have you out for those sessions as well. If you're around the Springfield area, just plan to be there both Saturday evening and Sunday. They'll be totally different subjects, and I think you will want to hear both of them. But listen, let's get right on into our lesson for today, because there are big developments going on. First of all, I want to introduce to you, in case you have not yet heard, what is just now happening concerning Turkey. Now remember, Turkey was the driving force behind the Ottoman Empire, and the Ottoman Empire dominated that part of the world for about 500 years until World War I. The Ottoman Empire was defeated in World War I, and it has been slowly clawing its way back since that time. Now then, Mr. Erdogan, the president of Turkey, believes he's ready to play the role of a great power again. Consequently, many of the things that he's doing right now is preparing Turkey for that ultimate outcome. Here's what's happened, though, just yesterday. Turkey's army, backed by international coalition airstrikes, on Wednesday launched an operation involving fighter jets and tanks to drive Islamic State jihadists out of a key Syrian border town. The air and ground operation, the most ambitious launched by Turkey in the Syria conflict, is aimed at clearing jihadists from the town of Jarablus, which lies directly opposite the Turkish town of Karkamis, the Prime Minister's office said. The operation, and when I saw this, it just absolutely stopped me dead in my tracks. The operation, named Euphrates Shield, began around 4 a.m. local time yesterday, with Turkish artillery pounding dozens of Islamic State targets around Jarablus. Turkish F-16 fighter jets and coalition warplanes also hit targets inside Syria, while an AFP photographer then saw around a dozen Turkish tanks cross into Syria to support the operation. Tensions had flared across the Syria-Turkey border the previous day following rocket fire from Jarablus, which landed inside Turkey, with the Turkish army firing howitzer rounds in response. The operation also appeared aimed at preempting any assault on Jarablus by pro-Turkish militias who also oppose the Islamic State, but are accused by Turkey of seeking to carve out a Kurdish region in northern Syria. Now, there are two Kurd groups, one in Syria and one in Turkey. Turkey fears the Kurds because they continually want to break away from Turkey and have their own state, which Mr. Erdogan does not want to happen. He fears that the Kurds in southern Turkey and the Kurds in northern Syria are really pushing to carve out their own particular entity, and he wants to prevent that. That's probably more the goal of this invasion than even to fight against ISIS. Now, with that said, I want to go a little deeper with this, because I came across an article earlier today entitled "Turkey Invades Northern Syria. Truth of Turkish Coup Revealed." This comes from the Global Research out of Canada. And here's what the article said. With the beginning of the operation aimed allegedly at seizing the city from militants of the so-called Islamic State, as well as preventing the city from falling into the hands of advancing U.S.-backed Kurdish forces, Ankara, which of course is the capital of Turkey, Ankara's move has made several things clear about the current geopolitical dimensions of the ongoing regional conflict. Now, before we go further, let's just pause and try to make some sense of all this. All right, this upheaval against Bashar al-Assad, the president of Syria, started, I think, back in 2010, 2011. It was an effort to overthrow Assad. The dictators of the Middle East had been falling. Mr. Mubarak had been pushed out of power. Mr. Gaddafi had been carried away. And so now then they wanted to do the same to Bashar al-Assad. However, he didn't go easily. He began to resist. The fighting became more fierce. After a while, the Iranians came in on the side of Syria. Then the Russians came in on the side of Syria. And now the United States said Bashar al-Assad has to go. And yet now Russia said, no, he's not going anywhere. So now this becomes a face-off between the world's two greatest nuclear powers. And President Obama apparently backed down from all that we can see. Well, this thing has continued on because you have several elements fighting. When the Sunni Muslims came to fight against Bashar al-Assad, they were so fierce. They began to put Christians to death. They were cutting off heads. And all of a sudden, the people that we were endorsing and financing, we could no longer tolerate. So we sort of backed off for a while. The thing has been ebbing and flowing ever since 2010, 2011, going no place. Well, now it looks like Mr. Assad is in for the long haul. He's still standing, and it looks like any settlement now will result in him staying in power at least for a while. Now, that really galls the United States of America because both President Obama and Hillary Clinton said he must go, but he hasn't gone. And it looks like now we've switched our tune and we're beginning to support him staying. Well, in the meantime, Turkey fears the Kurds more than Turkey fears ISIS because actually many people believe Turkey was supporting ISIS for a long time because Turkey is Sunni Muslim and the Islamic State is Sunni Muslim, but Bashar al-Assad is Shiite Muslim and Iran is Shiite Muslim. 60% of Iraq is Shiite Muslim, 40% is Sunni Muslim. So this is the religious element underneath the surface. The Shias do not believe that the Sunnis are saved. They believe that they are of the devil, and the Sunnis believe that the Shias are of the devil. About 85% of all of Islam is Sunni Muslim. About 15% is Shia Muslim. But the animosity between the two sections goes on and on. So we really are fighting for the domination of the Middle East. Iran wants to dominate the Middle East as a Shia Muslim power, and President Obama greatly contributed to that by negotiating the deal that was done here a few months ago. So here we are in the middle of this very confusing situation. Saudi Arabia and several other Arab countries have sided against Iran because they are Sunni Muslims and they do not want Iran as a Shia power to dominate all of Europe. But they also know that Iran fully intends to have nuclear weapons before it's over with. Now, they all hate Israel, but then they also hate each other. So it gets to be a complex mess. Well, now then we have this prophecy in the Bible which states a war is coming. You can read it for yourself. It's Revelation chapter 9, verse 13 through 16. And it says that there are 4 angels in the Bible. Angels are spirits. There are 4 angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates, which are prepared for an hour, a day, a month, and a year to slay 1/3 of mankind. Well, when you read that and say, wait a minute, 1/3 of mankind? Other translations say 1/3 of the human race. Another translation said 1/3 of all the people on the face of the earth. So this is a prophecy of a war that's going to be the greatest war the world has ever known. I mean, the worst war we've ever had was World War II, and that was 52 million dead. The next worst war was World War I. That was 8 million dead. And before that, there was never a war with 1 million dead. Now we're talking about a war 40 times World War II with 52 million dead. That's 2.4 billion. That's 1/3 of the human race. And the Bible specifically says this war will start from the Euphrates River. And every nation that houses the Euphrates is in this war. Furthermore, it says there were 4 angels that were bound in the great river Euphrates. There's biblical reasons to believe that every nation has its own angel. Well, if there are 4 nations that house the Euphrates River, which there are, the Euphrates begins in Turkey, down through Syria, down through Iraq, and finally empties out along the Iraq-Iranian border into the Persian Gulf. So there are 4 nations. If every nation has its own angel, could it be that these 4 angels, in fact, are the angels of Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Iran? All I can tell you is this is what the prophecy says, and now all 4 of those nations are engaged. Now, ISIS took the control of about 40% of the Euphrates back about 2 years ago and has been holding it ever since. But nobody really wanted to go in there and get their hands dirty to deal with ISIS, so everything's sort of been in limbo. Well, now then, Russia's moved in west of the Euphrates River. The United States has moved in east of the Euphrates River. And so here we've got all of this conflict with the world's 2 superpowers, also involved flying attacks every day with their airplanes against ISIS, supposedly, but in particular, Russia is defending Bashar al-Assad, making sure that he stays in power. So all the militants that are fighting against Assad, Russia is fighting against them. Now, over the last several weeks, Assad is getting stronger and stronger, thanks be to Russia. And he's gaining more and more territory, and in particular, the fighting has raged hot up in northern Syria at Syria's largest town, Aleppo. So that's where they've been fighting. ISIS has a stronghold there. Now, ISIS also has a stronghold in northern Syria along the Turkish border, all the way from Aleppo to the Euphrates River. Well, it's been about 2 years or so ago that there was a proposal to go in there and to declare a 25-mile wide no-fly zone and to make that a sanctuary area so that refugees, instead of having to spill across the border, go into Turkey and then Turkey disseminate them to all of Europe and some of them to the United States of America. This refugee problem is becoming quite a problem. So what is Bashar al-Assad thinking? What is Barack Obama thinking? What is Turkey thinking? What is Iraq, Iran thinking? What's Putin thinking? All these people are players here in the Middle East, and they're all involved up and down the Euphrates. And our Bible tells us a war is coming from the Euphrates River, and the time for it to happen on God's prophetic time clock is right now. And this invasion of Turkey into Syria yesterday just ratcheted everything up dramatically. Now, that's not all. The same day they invaded, guess who was visiting in Ankara, the capital of Turkey? None other than our own Vice President, Joe Biden. But it wasn't but 30 days ago that there was an attempted coup in Turkey, and Turkey even seemed to intimate that perhaps the United States was backing the coup because we had 50 to 70 nuclear weapons in the Incirlik Air Force Base in Turkey just above Aleppo, about 40 miles or so. And furthermore, our jet airplanes were flying attacks out of there every day. The next thing we hear is that after this coup, that Erdogan believes perhaps the United States was on the side of the plotters, and he even sent his troops to surround the Incirlik Air Base for a while, and we had about 1,500 pilots and crew that were there on the air base, surrounded for a period of time. In the meantime, we're pulling all of our nukes out of there now and moving them up to Romania. So what's going on behind the scenes? Well, this article believes that a lot of this was staged. Let me just read it to you in the words of this particular author. The U.S.-backed July coup was likely staged. First, with U.S. warplanes providing close air support for Turkish operations, claims by Ankara that the U.S. was behind an attempted coup in July appeared to have been fabricated and the coup itself staged. I mean, let's face it. If they believe that we supported the coup to overthrow Erdogan and 30 days later we're fighting side by side, well, that was some really fast fence mending. The article goes on to say, U.S. Vice President Joseph Biden made an official visit to Turkey just this week, yesterday to be exact, in what was the highest level visit by a U.S. representative since the attempted coup in July. Vice President Biden discussed bilateral relations and joint U.S.-Turkey military cooperation. Now, if this is not enough suspense injected into this entire scenario, let's add another factor. Turkey is a member of NATO, and an attack on one NATO member is supposed to be an attack on all NATO members. So if Turkey goes to war, then all of NATO is obligated to go to war. That's the way the NATO membership works. So now here we are using our air support to support this invasion by Turkey into northern Syria. I want you to hear some more of this article because it's well written and very interesting. The vice president will also reaffirm that the United States is doing everything we can to support Turkey's ongoing effort to hold accountable those responsible to the coup attempt while ensuring the rule of law is respected during the process. A senior Obama administration official told reporters briefing ahead of Biden's visit on condition of anonymity. Now, regarding U.S. joint operations with Turkey specifically, the BBC in its article said an unnamed senior U.S. official in Washington told BBC News before the start of the Turkish operation that it was partly to create a buffer against the possibility of the Kurds moving forward. Okay, so Turkey is more worried about the Kurds than Turkey is of ISIS. So it's trying to stop them. Now, since this article was written, another article came out just this morning that Biden had told the Kurds you're going to have to withdraw back across the Euphrates River to the east side of the Euphrates because the Kurds had crossed over. And the Kurds had been doing the boots on the ground thing that President Obama did not want our forces to have to do. So consequently, we were delighted with the Kurds. Well, now then all of a sudden, we're betraying the Kurds, apparently. Okay, the article goes on to say we are working with them on that potential operation. Our advisors are communicating with them on the Jarablus plan. We'll give close air support if there's an operation. It would be likewise difficult to believe that Turkey truly suspected the U.S. of an attempted decapitation of the nation's senior leadership in a violent, abortive coup just last month, only to be conducting joint operations with the U.S. inside Syria with U.S. military forces still based within Turkish territory. What is much more likely is that the coup was staged to feign a U.S.-Turkish fallout, draw in Russians, and allow Turkey to make sweeping purges of any elements within the Turkish armed forces that might oppose a cross-border foray into Turkey, a foray that is now unfolding. Now, what many people contended from the very beginning was that this uprising against Erdogan was staged so that he would have an excuse to purge the armed forces of those elements that were his enemies. Now, you've got to understand the background. Ataturk, who is a revered leader in Turkey way back in the early 1900s, said Turkey will never be a religious Sharia law state. And several times between the early 1900s and today, as Turkey would begin to drift toward becoming a Sharia state, the military would move in, overthrow the government, reestablish the secular nature of the government, and then finally bring democracy back so they would have their elections again. Well, Erdogan, everybody is saying, is set on bringing in Sharia law and to establish an Islamic state there, an Islamic devoted religious system in Turkey. That's the reason that some people thought there was going to be a military uprising again to overthrow Erdogan, but Erdogan has begun gaining more power. Now many people are saying that he actually staged this uprising in order to move in and to take out those elements of the military that wanted to overthrow him. And so he has arrested hundreds and hundreds, perhaps thousands, since the July 15th coup attempt, or supposed coup attempt, depending on who you believe. Okay, so let's continue on here. And the reason I'm spending this time is because here we are with this prophecy that a war is going to emanate from the Euphrates River that's going to end up spinning out of control, becoming a world war, and that 1/3 of the human race will die. Well, we're getting close to the end of our program right now, especially for those that don't stay for the second half of the program. So let me sort of wrap this up like this. If you're wondering where everything is going, we have a 14 DVD series called Understand the End Time. And you will understand the prophecies. Now, we're not telling you the end time is coming. We're telling you the end time is here. We're in it right now. If you've never been through the Understand the End Time series, get through it immediately. Also, if you're not yet a subscriber to End Time Magazine, do that today. Our brand new magazine is out. It tells all about why Pope Francis was given the Charlemagne Prize. Charlemagne was the founder of the Holy Roman Empire. To do any of those things, give us a call. The number to call is 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463.
Endtime Ministries has taught countless Bible studies about prophecy. One of our favorite places to teach is on the Mount of Olives, where Jesus will soon return, the Temple Mount, where the third temple will soon be built, and overlooking the plain of Megiddo, where the Battle of Armageddon will soon be fought. Being in the place where prophecies will soon take place brings them to life in a breathtaking way. In other words, our favorite place to teach prophecy is while on our Israel Prophecy Tour. You can be a part of it. Join Irvin and Judy Baxter October 27th through November 7th for a life-changing trip. For more details, go to endtime.com or call 1-800-END-TIME. Sign up today. Time is running out.
There's a specific prophecy in Daniel chapter 11, verse 32 and 33. Listen to it. And such as do wickedly against the covenant shall he corrupt by flatteries. But the people that do know their God shall be strong and do exploits. And they that understand among the people shall instruct many. So right while the Antichrist is corrupting people with his false doctrines and with his flatteries, yet there's going to be a people who are strong for God. They're going to do exploits. And their assignment is the ones who understand should be instructing others who don't understand.
To order End Time Ministries bestseller, Understanding the End Time, call 1-800-END-TIME or go to endtime.com.
If your station does not carry the full hour of End of the Age, go to endtime.com to hear the conclusion of today's broadcast.
Before we return to our subject for today, I do want to tell everyone out there once again, I will be in Fort Smith, Arkansas this evening, 7:30 tonight, and I'm going to be speaking on America's God-given destiny. You will see the future of the United States of America straight from the Bible tonight. I don't think anyone should miss it. The location is the North Side United Pentecostal Church, 3700 Kelly Highway in Fort Smith. I will look forward to seeing you there. Now, if you're 3 or 4 hours away, don't hesitate. There's still time. Just jump in your car, come on over. It'll be a great time. I'll certainly look forward to seeing all of you. Also, on Saturday evening and Sunday morning, I'm going to be in Springfield, Missouri. Saturday evening will be at 6 p.m. Now, here at Fort Smith, it's at 7:30 tonight. I don't want you to become confused. This is Thursday night at 7:30, August 25th. But on Saturday evening in Springfield, Missouri, I'll be there at 6 p.m., again teaching the lesson, America's God-Given Destiny. That will be at the University Plaza Hotel, 333 John Q. Hammonds Parkway in Springfield, Missouri. Then on Sunday morning, the location will move in Springfield to the Calvary United Pentecostal Church. That's 3010 West Nichols Street in Springfield, Missouri. Now, that meeting is going to be held at 10 a.m. on Sunday morning, but we're going to have two sessions. There will be one at 10, one at 12. So you can come to either or both of those. Now, the session on Sunday morning is going to be on breaking prophetic fulfillments. What's going on right now, and where are we on God's time clock? You're actually going to see a timeline of end time events in that session, and we're going to be talking about breaking prophetic fulfillments. Then we're going to open it up for questions from the floor, and I'll be answering those questions, hopefully. That will happen both at 10 and 12 on Sunday morning, and that's the Calvary United Pentecostal Church, 3010 West Nichols Street in Springfield, Missouri. Well, let's get back to our subject, because this whole thing is breaking, and as I'm talking about it, it's almost like the hair is standing on the back of my neck as I'm thinking about what is really breaking right now. It's so amazing what's going on. Let me go back to the article that I'm reading from, and the name of the article is On the Ground, Operation Euphrates Shield Kicks into High Gear, and then the other one we're reading from, Turkey Invades Northern Syria, Truth or Turkish Coup Revealed. Okay, let's get back to our subject. Anthony Cardalucci, a Bangkok-based geopolitical analyst, would note in a July 18 piece entitled Turkey's Failed Coup, a gift from God or from Washington, ? And he was stating that the coup was possibly staged not against Turkey, but in part by it, and with the help of not only the United States, but also Gulen's political faction. Remember, Gulen's the guy in the United States. He's been living in the U.S. for a long time, and Erdogan says we want him extradited and brought to Turkey so we can place him on trial, because they're claiming that he was actually the instigator of the political coup. Well, this author says he thinks it's all a ruse. Anyway, the article continues. It will represent a 21st century Reichstag fire. Remember, it's when they set the Reichstag on fire that it gave Hitler the excuse to purge and to go out with all force to put down the rebellion and to restore law and order. Well, that's what this writer thinks is happening now, and what Erdogan has done with staging this coup. I'm not saying this is right or wrong. Nevertheless, this is the opinion. Now, it goes on to say that this coup, this purge, has removed the last remaining obstacles to President Erdogan's and to the corrosive institutions he has constructed in their collective bid to seize absolute power over Turkey. Now, here we come into another phase. Now, this I know for sure is factual. It's titled Building Long-Desired Militant Safe Havens. The crossing of Syria's border constitutes the fulfillment of long-standing plans predating both the Kurdish offensive and the rise of the Islamic State. The plans laid by Washington and its regional allies seek to establish a buffer zone or safe haven within Syrian territory unassailable by Syrian forces, from which Western-backed militants can launch operations deep into Syrian territory. Currently, these operations are launched from Turkish territory itself, with militants being incrementally pushed out of Aleppo and Syrian forces making advances everywhere west of the Euphrates River. It appears that the U.S. is attempting to use Kurdish forces to annex eastern Syria, while Turkey's latest move is aimed at finally creating a long-desired northern safe haven in order to prevent a full collapse of fighting within the country. Okay, now, about 2 years ago or so, we talked on this program about the desire to create a 25-mile wide no-fly zone, what they call a safe zone, all along the southern Turkish border and all along the northern Syrian border. That safe zone, that 25-mile buffer, was supposed to run from Aleppo all the way to the Euphrates River. Well, that has never happened. As a matter of fact, the U.S. was giving access to the Incirlik Air Force Base about 40 miles above Aleppo in order to make this all happen. Well, it never came down that way. Well, here it comes back again now. They're wanting to create this safe zone. And what they want to do is create an area so that all these refugees that are pouring into Turkey, which then pour into Europe, instead, they can stay right there in this 25-mile buffer zone, and the Allies can feed them there, but it'll be a lot less headache than shipping hundreds of thousands into Europe and into the United States of America. So that appears to be the grand design, but there's more to it than that. The plot thickens. Because, according to the prophecies of Muhammad, the final battle between the West and Islam is supposed to happen at a place called Dabiq, which is in this 25-mile safe zone. Now, many commentators have said, well, look, they claim that when they have this battle with the West, that their Mahdi is going to come, which is the Muslim Messiah. He's going to come and fight for them, even though it appears that they're going to be losing the war. Therefore, ISIS went up and captured Dabiq 2 years ago in preparation for this final battle. Well, now then, if in fact the United States, Turkey, and other forces move in to try to take Dabiq. Now remember, Dabiq is the name of the recruitment magazine that the Islamic State uses, because they're saying to all the young Muslims out there, hey, come, this is the time for the coming of the Mahdi. And this is going to be the final glorious battle. And they use the Dabiq magazine, which is published monthly, to influence the Muslims around the world to come and join them for the fight, the final war against the hated West, and the final war where the Mahdi will come. And also they teach that when the Mahdi comes, Jesus Christ will come with him. Well, this is the 25-mile zone that we're talking about here. As a matter of fact, in this article from globalresearch.ca, they actually have a map of the area, and they show the approximate safe zone that they're wanting to create, and it includes, in fact, the area called Dabiq. So many people are saying to the United States, look, if you want to really defeat ISIS, President Obama called it the JV team, and then he can't defeat the JV team, and it makes him look terrible. And you've got this guy called Donald Trump who's saying, I'll whip them so fast it'll make your head swim. And if, in fact, Donald Trump did come to power and he did in short order what Barack Obama could not do, it is going to be a horrible stain on the Barack Obama presidency. And so I'm sure that Obama wants to bring this to some kind of a successful conclusion. And it may be now. Now remember, Syria was invaded yesterday by Turkey with U.S. air support. And we're up in this area that we're talking about. As a matter of fact, Jarablus is right at the end of the safe zone that they are proposing. And that's the town that Turkey is trying to take as of right today. And then you've got this safe zone, 25 miles wide and about maybe 100 miles long. And that's going to be the area of Dabiq where it looks like this final war is actually going to take place. Now, that's what's going on today. And the Bible says that there's a war coming from the Euphrates River area. Don't forget, the Euphrates River is up there. It's right here on this map, showing it flowing right up there through the safe zone area, and then finally going on up into Turkey. So we're in the middle of this whole thing right now. Are we on the brink of the sixth trumpet war as it is described in Revelation 9, verse 13 through 16? Ladies and gentlemen, it looks like to me we are. Now, I can't tell you we are until it breaks loose in all of its fury. But when I saw that all four of the Euphrates River powers, there are only four. The Euphrates starts in Turkey, flows down through Syria, down through Iraq, and then finally empties out into the Persian Gulf along the border between Iraq and Iran. So there are four nations that house the Euphrates: Turkey, Syria, Iraq, Iran. And they're all four fighting. Iran has 100,000 troops in Iraq right now. And that's where most of the Euphrates River is located. The Euphrates River enters Iraq on the southern border of Syria and flows all the way through Iraq, all the way down into the Persian Gulf. So Iran has 100,000 troops there. Iraq is fighting there. Syria is fighting there. Turkey now has invaded yesterday. So all four of the Euphrates River powers now are engaged in battle. And then add to that this secret agreement that was made back in December of 2015. Russia and the United States got together and said, if we're going to defeat ISIS, let's decide how to do it and let's not get in each other's way. So it was agreed that Russia would fight ISIS on the west side of the Euphrates River and the United States would fight ISIS on the east side of the Euphrates River. So that's what's been happening since December of last year. Well, here we are now. Everything is being ratcheted up. Where's this going to end? Is America and Turkey really plotting to take Assad out? Now, if they think they're going to do that, they're going to have to face down with Mr. Vladimir Putin. And that's not going to be a pleasant experience because Putin has just now brought anti-air air missile systems into Iran, some of the very latest technology. He has just installed it into Iran. I know it's a little tedious. It's also slightly frightening, except God is in the whole plan. God is arranging things for the end time, and the end time is right now. You're listening to The Age. We have one more segment. I'll be taking your calls.
1 Chronicles 12:32 states, "And of the children of Issachar, which were men that had understanding of the times, to know what Israel ought to do." Jerusalem Prophecy College was created to educate the Jewish people concerning the prophecies that will come to pass in the near future. But why stop there? We want to give everyone this opportunity. That's why the online learning portion of the Jerusalem Prophecy College has been created, designed for students who desire to participate in the program but cannot attend the physical college in Jerusalem. With the online program, you can study from the convenience of your home with the flexibility to accommodate your schedule. Jerusalem Prophecy College helps to train a core group of leaders who can effectively minister to others in the end time. The next semester begins Monday, September 5th. Go to JerusalemProphecyCollege.com to register today. That's JerusalemProphecyCollege.com.
Let me give you a little test. How many times has Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel visited President Obama in the last 9 months? And how many times has he visited President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, in the last 9 months? Now, you may not know that off the top of your head, so I'll tell you. Well, he hasn't visited President Obama at all. He had one visit scheduled, which he canceled because, well, just because there was a lot of tension. So he hasn't visited President Obama at all. But he's visited Vladimir Putin 4 times in the last 9 months. Highly unusual. That doesn't count the phone calls, because within the last week, Vladimir Putin has issued an invitation to Israel and the Palestinians to come to Russia to negotiate a peace deal. Now, the Bible says a peace deal is coming, and when it comes, it will trigger the final 7 years. Now, here's the bigger question. Could all this be related? All this confusion? Could it be, since Russia is playing such a powerful role right now? Russia saved the regime of Bashar al-Assad. He has kept him in power in Syria. So he's got a lot of leverage. He's got a lot of power. So is there a deal actually going on to defeat ISIS? To solve the tensions between Israel and Syria, between Israel and the Palestinians? We have rumors that there are talks going to happen and that they want to pull all this off this year. Could it be that somewhere between Barack Obama and Vladimir Putin and President Erdogan and Benjamin Netanyahu, that they think they're going to be able to make a big master move and pull all this off? I don't know the answer to that for sure, but I'll tell you, they are talking. If they get this done, now while they're trying to do it, they may end up exploding the whole thing. The whole thing may explode in their face. You know, sometimes when you're going to dismantle an explosive, sometimes it blows up in your face. Well, the situation in the Middle East has never been as explosive as it is right now, and it could blow up in their face. And the Bible does say a war is coming. It's going to kill 1/3 of mankind. And wouldn't President Obama love to pull something like this off in the last few months of his presidency, because he certainly is looking at his legacy right now? Well, I cannot tell you for sure whether that's the way it's going to work. I know it's coming. There's coming this war that's going to kill 1/3 of mankind. And then there's going to be a peace agreement between Palestinians and Israelis. It's going to look like the issue has been worked out. It's going to be a 7-year agreement, because they're not going to be able to solve everything. They're going to put the things they can't solve off for 7 years. And then when the 7 years expires, the pressure is going to come on Israel to share Jerusalem with the Palestinians, which Israel's not going to do. And that's going to end up in the Battle of Armageddon. That will end up with the United Nations, the world community, invading Israel to force Israel to do what it says. And that will end up in the Battle of Armageddon. So we know what's coming. But to know every curve in the road, it's one thing to sort of draw a line between where I am and where I'm going to end up. It's another thing to actually travel the road, to walk the path, and to see all of the curves and the chuck holes and the mines and everything else along the way. So that's what we're talking about here today. Let me just wind up with this, and then if I have time, I'll take a few of your questions. British Special Forces, while all this is going on, are reportedly in southern Syria attempting to carve out a similar haven for militants along Jordan and Iraq's border with Syria. So, trying to create a safe haven in northern Syria between Syria and Turkey, and then trying to create a safe haven between Syria and Jordan. The participation of U.S. air power in the ongoing operation also makes clear the lack of strategic and political depth of U.S. loyalty to its supposed Kurdish allies, a betrayal in motion even as Kurdish forces are being marshaled and directed against Syrian forces by the U.S. in eastern Syria. Plans for such safe havens were disclosed as early as 2012 with U.S. policymakers in a Brookings Institute paper titled Assessing Options for Regime Change, stating an alternative is for the diplomatic efforts to focus first on how to end the violence and how to gain humanitarian access, as is being done under former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan's leadership. This may lead to the creation of safe havens and humanitarian corridors, which would have to be backed by limited military power. This would, of course, fall short of U.S. goals for Syria and could preserve Assad in power. From that starting point, however, it is possible that a broad coalition with appropriate international mandate could add further coercive action to its efforts. Well, this just gets more and more and more complex. But the bottom line is Turkey invaded Syria yesterday. That means all four powers, Turkey, Syria, Iraq, Iran, are now at war, as well as Russia and the United States of America, all up and down the Euphrates. And your Bible prophesies explicitly that a war is coming from the Euphrates River that will result in the killing of 1/3 of mankind. Let's quickly go to the phones now. We got a little bit of time left, and Jim is anchoring the program back at our headquarters in Plano. Jim, let's go to Travis first of all in Kentucky. I want to hear from him.
All right, Travis, you're on the air with Irvin.
Great to talk to you this afternoon. Pastor Baxter, if I put on my moccasins as a Christian, and I say, what would my position be on all this as a Syrian Christian? Who would be the good guys to me, and who would be the bad guys? I think there's absolutely no doubt that whatever our misgivings about Russia, whatever our misgivings about Iran, whatever our misgivings about even Hezbollah, or even the Assad government, it's absolutely plaid clear that Christians, religious minorities, and thousands of moderate Sunnis, frankly, a lot of Sunnis as well, there's no real division. That was all made up. The bottom line is the people who want a secular society, Iran, Hezbollah, Assad, and Russia, are their friends. On the other hand, Muslim Brotherhood leader Turkey, U.S. ally Saudi Arabia, and Al-Qaeda, Muslim Brotherhood, and all these rebels, whether they're ISIS or whether they're some other group we're trying to say are moderate, would be my enemy as a Christian if I were in Syria. Now, I'm not speaking of Israeli-Iranian relations. I'm just speaking of the conflict in Syria. Here's my question. As far as the conflict in Syria goes, I think it's absolutely ridiculous that we don't understand that the institutions of Syria are still intact, that whatever the United States ideas are as far as doing a regime change, since they can't get it one way, they're going to try to get it another. Whatever the Muslim Brotherhood's ideas are, we as Christians need to know we should not be on that side of this conflict. We need to be on the side of secular people, of Christians, of moderate Muslims. And clearly, and you pointed this out as well, that's on the side of the institutions of Syria, under President Assad, under the Syrian Arab Army. And my question is this. While I don't particularly care for Iran, and I'm not crazy about Hezbollah by any stretch of the imagination, is it morally okay for me, even if Israel doesn't like the government side of the conflict, for me to stand with my Christian brothers and sisters in Christ and favor that side of the conflict as opposed to the side of the conflict that Turkey and the U.S. and Saudi Arabia are on? Because that side, and ISIS as well, though they fight each other. That
Travis,
side of the
let me say to you before we run out of time that sometimes you are presented with two bad choices. You don't want to do either. Now, you're stating correctly that the Christians were not nearly as persecuted under Assad as they were by the rebels who came in to try to overthrow Assad. Furthermore, if you've been watching this close, Israel has not fought against Assad. The only thing Israel has done is told Assad, if you allow armaments to be shipped to Hezbollah through Syrian territory, then we're going to interfere. And Israel's done that several times. There was a large shipment of rockets and explosives that were headed for Hezbollah, and They were outside the outskirts of Damascus, and Israel bombed them. It's been about a year ago. More recently, things have happened 3 or 4 or 5 times, and Assad has not retaliated because Israel told them up front, we're not trying to take you down, because let me tell you, Israel could annihilate Assad within the next 5 hours. Israel has the air power. As a matter of fact, a few years ago, Israel buzzed the palace of Assad with him inside of it, broke the sound barrier, and flew back to Israel. It was their message. If we want you, we got you. They could have eliminated Assad that day. They have not wanted to do that. Now, America has been very involved, but America has done a lot of things that Israel did not approve of, and that's one reason Israel and America have not been too communicative during the Obama administration. Israel was not for the overthrow of Mubarak. Israel was not for the overthrow of the head of Libya. So Israel has not been behind the Arab Spring. That's all been the makings of Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and now John Kerry. So when you try to divide this, and when it's all, so like you say, Christians are probably better off under the Assad regime than they would be over whatever should replace it. On the other hand, we know ultimately that Iran, Russia, Turkey are all going to invade Israel at Armageddon. So when you look at the prophecy and where we're headed, then we know what's coming. Sometimes we stand by and we're not controlling it, and we have to just simply realize that God's plan is unfolding in front of us, and that's just about the best that we can do. I don't know whether that helps any or not, Travis, but your question is a good one.
That's fine.
Okay, I appreciate it very much. And ladies and gentlemen, let me say to all of you, I know that I took a lot of time today, but I thought this was so important for us to realize that Operation Euphrates Shield was launched yesterday. And that is just a little bit bone-chilling to me when I look in the Bible and I see that there is a war that's going to start from the Euphrates River, and that all 4 of the countries that house the Euphrates are already fighting now. If we're not in that war, I'm going to be surprised, frankly. I'm not saying we are, but it certainly looks like we are in the beginning of that war right now, and we have to draw near to God. We have to have great revival. And let me just sign off with this. If you'd like to go to Israel with us, this is a great time to do it. Just heard from Israel, my friends that are there. They say terrorism is down, the streets are full of people. It's a great time to go to Israel. We're leaving October the 27th. There's a few days yet to sign up, so don't procrastinate. Give us a call, 1-800-ENDTIME. Ask to speak to someone about the tour. God bless you all. We'll see you tomorrow.
End of the Age is a production of Endtime Ministries. This broadcast will be available on our website, endtime.com, in the archives section. On our website, you'll also find more information about how current events are fulfilling Bible prophecy. To reach our operators, call 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463. Endtime Ministries is partner supported. We would like to say thank you to our partners who made this broadcast possible. To do what Matthew 24:14 said, to reach the world with the gospel of the kingdom.